Good evening, everyone. We are providing tonight a brief overview of the American Rescue Plan dollars that have been given to Enfield. We're going to do this in two parts. We're going to have the Assistant Town Manager, Kasia Preciello, begin, and then I'll take over halfway through.
All right, good evening, everyone. So some of you may have seen pieces of this presentation before. Just as a general reminder, some eligible uses of funding of the American Rescue Plan dollars include supporting public health expenditures, addressing negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, replacing lost public sector revenue, providing premium pay for essential employees, which is what we did during the last council meeting, investing in water and sewer infrastructure, and investing in broadband infrastructure. So in Enfield, we will be receiving a total of $12.9 million. As of this past June 24th, 2021, we received 50% of that amount, so around $6.5 million. And then the remainder of the funds should be received during this spring. Some new deadlines. The report is actually due April 30th, 2022, the first report here. We have until 12/31/2024 to encumber, obligate the funds, and we have until the end of 2026 to spend the cash. And since we presented last time, the final rule has been released. So the final rule actually goes into effect April 1st, so next week. Any expenses allocated under the interim rule that was in power before are recognized. Eligible uses have not changed. And now there is a new provision where towns may spend up to $10 million of their allocation costs and have a little more flexibility how they report that spending. So a few things that we have already completed. So in June of 2020, we opened the Enfield Express to offer drive-through services to our residents to keep both our residents and our staff safe. So if you remember, we were doing dog licenses, tax services, finding leaf bags, really anything we could find to do contactless. We were doing that through the Enfield Express. Now the building is home to our tax and assessor office and also our Thompsonville Community Police Unit. And that also includes the building itself and then the 1.7 full acres where the building's located and behind it. And that one of the benefits of that is that's right adjacent to our town hall parking and the Higgins Park behind town hall. So that purchase was actually completed already for a total of $725,000 using ARPA funds. In addition, we also allocated $50,000 to the health department to do a testing site at the Enfield Annex for both Enfield residents and town employees. 185 tests were administered over 8 days. A total of $26,000 approximately was spent, and the rest is actually coming back to the town. And at our last council meeting, this council passed premium pay for town employees. So that was $812,000 for full and part-time employees for work performed from March 1st, 2020, which was the beginning of the pandemic, until December 31st, 2021. And that impacted 375 full-time employees and 90 part-time employees, and that was about $50,000 in FICA Medicare. And that was a total of $874,000 that was spent during the last council meeting. So here's a summary of just a few things I just talked about. So $2.4 million spent, 12.9 was received. So what remains to be allocated is about $10.5 million that we have left to work with. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen to talk about the future.
You're going to click?
I can click, or you can click, up to you.
You can click. So to continue the theme of items that were discussed by the town council last fall, these have been appropriated, but they have not yet been spent. And the first one is the additional construction and design for the parking at Higgins Park, which is a $425,000 item. And then recently, we had placed the order for the fitness stations as well as the band shell at Higgins Park, which would be expected for midsummer delivery, and that is a $298,000 item. And then lastly, the bike path design from Franklin to the Suffield Bridge. That is a LOTSIP grant, and so we are budgeted for and have done the design for that, which has come in a little less than $100,000. So that's, again, in process from the previous council and last fall that have carried over and are now being appropriated this spring. The other items that were proposed last fall but have not had any type of financial action taken on them are the Brainerd Park restrooms, Powder Hollow restrooms to go along with the work that is being there, as well as proposed restrooms here in Higgins Park, as well as a redo of the town hall bathrooms and the water fountains throughout this building. So these were proposed for rehabilitating town-owned property. We did amend the top two, Brainerd Park and Powder Hollow, in order to also include field enhancements because Brainerd Park has just gone out to bid. There are some additional monies that are needed, and there are some enhancements that are being requested for Powder Hollow. So we are going to probably increase that dollar amount there a little bit so that we can take into those as well, those into consideration. We also kept this slide in because we did have the failed referendum item on the public safety complex. The thought process from what I can tell is that there would be a bond authorization from the state and that ARPA dollars would be used for the local buy-in piece, which would eliminate any dollars coming out of the general fund budget. So for consideration and just to kind of keep a running chronology about what's been happening, we included that slide as well. But again, as you all know, that did not get approved per public referendum last fall. The water line and sewer infrastructure piece is one that a lot of communities are looking for. This is probably one of the least exciting divisions within municipal government, but I would argue that it's one of the most critical. And here in Enfield, you have quite a few projects that are coming up over the next few years. So the thought process was to put forward a water line and sewer infrastructure project line item from ARPA funds, which would fast track some of those. And as you can see from the sheet, we have some design costs and some estimates, and we believe that over time, the 15 pump stations are going to need to be upgraded. They range from $250,000 repairs to upwards of $4.5 million for the major one. So we are looking to think about doing some of that all at once. That would help with the schedule, and it would also be a potential savings to the sewer users and the taxpayers over time if we were able to front load some of these dollars into that investment in one fell swoop. Now comes the fun part. Over the last few months, we've had lots of discussions here in this room, but also within the departments. We've had suggestions from the community, and we've had suggestions from some of our employees about where they think we could be using some of these dollars. And for those of you who remember the announcement a year ago when the ARPA funds were approved by Congress, these are meant for transformational change projects and also to mitigate any of the effects of the COVID pandemic. So at the top of the list is funds for supporting small businesses and or supporting small businesses through community gift cards, which was a proposal that was received, so that's why it's up there. This would need some parameters and some focus from the policymakers as to how you would like to approach that type of support. We know that the small businesses took a lot of hits during these past 2 years. And so we think it would be appropriate to have some type of business plan in order to offer support to them, whatever those parameters end up being. Likewise, another area that ARPA allows you to provide funding for is for qualifying nonprofits, those that might have provided services during COVID, those that may have been affected by reduced fundraising, projects that couldn't get done, all of those types of things. That, again, would require some parameters from the policy leaders as to how you would like to approach offering some line item of support to qualifying nonprofits here in town. Another thing that you can do is there is a focus area for disadvantaged households. So we put that under funds for housing rehabilitation. There could be an incentive program. We could do some type of matching grant. We could do outright support. The goal, obviously, is to rehabilitate housing stock to allow that everybody has the opportunity and the right to live in safe and sanitary housing. How do you accomplish that? Well, it could be in our high-density neighborhoods where you could focus one type type of program, such as in Thompsonville, to encourage the investor landlords to keep their properties up. It could encourage a home ownership program. It could move over to the historic districts, which we all know that those homes are very expensive to maintain. It should be something that there's something for everybody in all the neighborhoods of Enfield that could benefit from this. Another project that's been talked about is the Enfield High School fields and the rehabilitation and the proposal to tweak those fields and move some of them around in order to optimize placement, as well as add some security elements and take care of the water problems and potentially use that slope for bleachers. They have been putting money aside. We've been putting some money aside. This ARPA funds could actually put that project over the top and actually get it done and send it to referendum if, in fact, that project was chosen. There's also workforce development and apprentice programs in order to improve the job situation. We could run apprentice programs. We could target certain neighborhoods. We could target the hospitality industry, for example, in order to get people connected with jobs programs. So that's another eligible use as well. Suggestion was respite programs for caregivers for those that have children who may be, or young adults that don't have the plethora of social opportunities that others do once they've aged out of programs. So that is something that we put on the list. And then obviously another project, the pool project for Higgins Park, that also failed referendum. Now without the St. Adalbert's piece being attached to it, it may be worth a discussion amongst the policy members as to whether it's worth getting updated costs for that. With the closure of Lamagna Pool, I think it now has refocused people into thinking that that type of activity is needed on this end of town, so it might be worth looking at again. We also have some ongoing projects at town-owned properties, including fixing the parking situation at the Hazardville Institute so that there could be an end use at that building. So we have recently taken down the former Public Works building in the back, but there's some easement issues and some legal issues and some others that would need to be resolved in order to get that project across the finish line. Likewise, we have had discussions about the obligations we have at 100 High Street as we prepare to turn that building over to the Opera House Players. There's been discussions about additional fields and Lafayette Trail, that park that is also in Thompsonville, to create some type of passive recreation there. And there was a suggestion from, I believe, the teachers union about ARPA premium pay for education workers. So we put that on the list as well. Now, as we've been going through the budget process and getting that ready for the town council to review, we also pulled out some items for consideration that could actually help the general fund as well as us as we plan budgeting. So as you know, and we've talked about, the final rule allows for $10 million that does not have to be attached specifically to COVID mitigation. But it should be in some way connected to departments and other activities that had a COVID response. So as you know, we're behind with our replacement schedule on the police cars, so we did add that since they were first-line responders that had a lot of action during the height of the COVID pandemic. So that would catch us up to where we needed to be with that purchase. We also talked about as a enhancement of library services, which is very popular in town and is always at the top of the list when surveys are done, what it would cost to add Sunday hours next winter. And that's the number for 4 hours being open at the main library branch for the months of January, February, and March, have people be able to get out and have another activity for them during the winter. The AV system at the senior center is in a situation where it can no longer be fixed, so it needs to be repaired and replaced in certain parts. So we put that on as well because of the role that the senior center has played with reducing social isolationism, the fact that it is the site for all of our vaccination clinics, so that works there as well. And also to front load some of the small repairs that did not get done at the annex and the pool and the gym the last time that there was rehabilitation there. This includes diving blocks, a refinishing of the floor, and there might be, and a new scoreboard. One of the scoreboards is inoperable. We put in the new ambulance, which again would put us ahead of what that replacement schedule is. The citizen request, the repair for basketball court at Wallop on Newlands Road, $120,000 for some new IT equipment that we would need, And then we found some real value in what we discussed last month about the scanning project that we took on with the money that the town clerk had in her account that has now taken care of the building department. We need to do that in additional departments as well. So we thought that that would be a great one-time use as well. And then there's the discussion about additional splash pads, which we've had for several months. Below the referendum number, we can put in quite a few, or one big one, or anything at this point. But if we were to do that, I would just caution the town council that might need to be put up higher on the list, because if you would be interested in that, we should order those right away. And then lights and bathrooms at Mark Twain came in. That's the site where all the pickleball players are, and so that was something that the lights were discussed previously, and then bathrooms came on as a add-on to that project for potential ARPA funding. Again, outside use, outside recreation, all fitting within the eligible uses. So if we were to do that, that is exactly for the ones that had prices attached to it. For that slide, that still leaves us with about $8.5 million. So to go back to the discussion about small business support, nonprofit support, or all of those other items that have yet to be priced out, now you kind of see where you are in terms of how to allocate funds for those categories that still do not have numbers attached to them. Can we just go back to the one that doesn't have numbers? The one before that, I think. So these are the ideas, just to revisit quickly. They don't have numbers attached to them. So $8.5 million that remains, you could look at these, or we could talk about, other items as we continue on as well. We can go back. So the next steps, there is the available amount. We have some proposed items, which would possibly take it down a couple of million, but that's still quite a bit of money that could be looked at in terms of what are those transformational projects, what are those impacts that had negative economic business, nonprofits, neighborhoods. What do we want to ameliorate with these monies? So that's where we leave it in your hands as the policymakers to help us determine what those parameters are. That's it.
Okay, Gina? Yeah. Deputy Mayor Sakala.
Were you all done?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did have a couple of questions and comments. First, this is a great presentation. It's good to see sort of a bunch of different ideas and suggestions that have been brought forth. I would think, and something of this magnitude, I think it deserves community input, resident input. So, because these funds are meant to enhance community and enhance our town, I would love to see some sort of community outreach survey, online question and answer, whether you have some hard copies in certain places like the town hall, the library, the senior center, and then online survey. I just think it would be a really good use. People may have great ideas that we're not thinking of. We're only 11 people and department heads and town staff. So I would love to see some community input if we could do something like that. In addition, I do have a couple of suggestions. I loved the fact that the Mark Twain got on there for the bathrooms. There are soccer fields in the back of Mark Twain. I don't know if we can put those bathrooms somewhere so they can really be accessible by both the pickleball people and the soccer fields in the back. So obviously that's not an addition, it's just sort of placement. And I know people are sick and tired of hearing me. I'm gonna die on like the bathroom hill, but parents and families love bathrooms when they're out with their kids. So if we could also add them to the Eli Whitney area. So at the library, there's a bunch of softball fields, and then the Rotary had built this beautiful playground. And unfortunately, I think all the kids tend to like run through the library and use one of their 2 or 3 little bathrooms. And I think it would be wonderful if we added bathrooms there to sort of help alleviate that traffic of running kids in and out of the bathrooms. So I think that would help both the playground area, and I think there's 3 softball fields there. Another one would be if we could find something to do with like adult daycare. I know we recently disbanded that program. I would love to see some of this money go to some sort of adult daycare program that would replace or try to replace some or all of what we used to have, or maybe do something better than we had. And another piece would be mental health services. There has been a big discussion surrounding mental health and what has happened to a lot of our youth and really a lot of adults because of the pandemic. So I think trying to funnel some of this money into mental health services would be wonderful. I would love to see that happen as well. And let me see. I think my only other one was I would love to see, again, fields done right at Enfield High. Is huge pet peeve of mine. We have this beautiful building. I was on the building committee. I would love the fields to be as beautiful as that high school. So that's it for me. Thanks.
Okay. I have a few comments that I would like to make. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was excellent. There's a few things of mention, and at the public library, and this just came to my mind just now, that the Rotary years and years ago put a walking track, and you don't even know that it's there. It's a quarter-mile track that goes around the public library. Maybe we can upgrade that walking track, and to go along with that nice playscape and the work that could be done over at Eli Whitney School. But there is an actual track that people actually could go for a nice walk right in that area. In regard to the Board of Ed and the Town Council, I really think that, with the Board of Ed receiving their variety of one-time funding sources through the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and I'm going to suggest that us and the Board of Ed meet to make sure that every dollar is being stretched correctly as far as possible, from their end and from our end, and what their funds are going to be used for. Now, also, part of your presentation was on a list for consideration, and I think it would be a great idea that the town could issue premium pay for the teachers, paras, and cafeteria workers. I'm going to actually make a recommendation that we support these groups and really say thank you for going above and beyond during the pandemic. It falls under our guidelines to be able to do that for them. I know that we'll have to look at the language, we'll have to look at the criteria that would be allowed for the amount for these particular groups. It doesn't have to be exactly the same that we had. Obviously, it's going to be a lot different. But I just think that we've always been a good partner. We've been very supportive of our education department, and I think it would be the right and appropriate action to take on our part to help with the premium pay on their end. I don't know what they can do on their end, but if we work together, I think that's something that would be beneficial to the town. One other thing is, commercial facelifts in all different areas of town. I don't care if it's down at the Enfield Square. I know a lot of companies, not the Square, but all of our strip malls. I know a lot of people have been doing a nice job with facelifts in Thompsonville, facelifts in Hazardville. Give these businesses opportunities to be able to apply for, commercial facelifts in their buildings. And for business support, I like all of those ideas. And I did have some discussion in regard to some upgrades of what's going to be done at the fields, and you had mentioned that. And I am ecstatic to hear that they're going to be open to get this. If we're going to have these upgrades, and it's a one-time shot to make our fields be quality fields where people are going to take pride and want to play on a particular field, whether it's a soccer field, a softball field, a baseball field, a football field, having pride in the middle school, having pride in their high school. This is the opportunity for us to be able to do this and do it correctly. And I think the bathrooms are very important. You know, not only do young families like to have them, but us older people love to have them. But I know that I'm gonna shoot to Councilor Despard and then Councilor Mangini. Okay, all right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we passed 2 weeks ago, when we passed the premium pay, I was under the assumption that the teachers would be getting compensated on the school side of things. And I think that it's very important that no matter how that happened, that it happened, because I believe that teachers had it as hard, if not harder than most. And not only did they deal with the acute effects of the pandemic, they're still dealing with the more long-term effects of the pandemic. And so I think something needs to get done there. And then the only other question I have was, I was expecting the Town Farm Road bike path design costs to be on this presentation. And I just don't, maybe that didn't make it on, or I just, that part of town, I think, really needs some recreation. And I think it's a perfect use, and I don't think it's that much money, so I don't know if we could, include that. That would be great.
We did have conversations about it, and I think it could easily be added, but at this point, I'm going to rely on Kasha to help with the numbers, because there's a lot of numbers being jumbled with this one. This was for the Town Farm Road multi-use path. The construction of the path is with a Connecticut DOT LOTSIP grant. The $80,000 is for design.
$80,000 for design, $847,000 for the construction, which would have to be appropriated over 2 fiscal years because it is over the referendum limit.
So we just wanted to massage that a little bit and
Right.
talk to finance and some other people just to see how that would look, because that number is one that doesn't really fit, because it is another referendum project that we would have to put. But
Right.
it's in movement, so to speak.
Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Mangini?
Thank you. Thank you, Ellen, for putting this together. Very good PowerPoint. And by the way, I did find it. It finally found its way to me. One of the proposed items for consideration is the respite program for caregivers. I know some of us up here, Gina and Bob and me and Bill, did not support closing our adult daycare under any circumstances, and I firmly believe to this day that that was wrong. So I'm happy to see that that type of a facility, will be considered, but to include adult members of our society that may have some social needs or requirements. I think that's important too. So I'd like to see us maybe further explore this opportunity. And then the second item that I just wanted to bring forward, it was brought to my attention by the Veterans Council. Post 80 on Enfield Street has an issue. Of course, they have a water wet issue in the back, but lighting is very poor back there, and the parking is very limited, very stressful, and inadequate. So I thought that would be something maybe we could explore as well. And, our veterans do give an awful lot to our town. I think we owe it to our veterans to explore what it is perhaps the town can do to help out. Thank you.
Councilor Ludwig?
Glad you see I think that when it comes to the projects, I know we can go in a million ways, but I think the next big allocation, in my opinion, should be the small businesses. And an interesting idea about the credit card. Don't know how we really control it, but it's a great idea. So I think the other thing people need to understand, the other group that did the great job during the pandemic was the taxpayer. Yeah, we opened up the Enfield Express, which again, some people agreed, disagreed, but the tax collection through the pandemic was almost 99%. That's why this town didn't go under, because taxpayers paid their taxes. I know you don't get no glamour about it, and again, all these projects are great, and all the ones we get to, that's great. But we really need the next major allocation, in my opinion, should be the small businesses that have struggled, whether it be, there now is when they're seeing the pain with inflation, clearly, well over double digits, no matter what, depends who you believe nationally. Now they're feeling the pain where the inflation now is affecting their customer. And a lot of those businesses, I know the criteria is hard, small versus, but again, what about the supermarkets? Even Home Depot, when people would go to Home Depot, and that was open every day. These things mattered for the last 12, 24 months. And whether it's through, again, $1,000, I know I saw some other towns. I just think we need to really do that next. And then if folks want to go to the community and find out what projects are most important, because really all these are important projects, and you could argue, but I think if you look at the town and what we've been through, and really people forget we've survived 2 hurricanes over the last 2 years as well. The water table was at a historic level for the last year and a half, and people who've never had water in their basement got water in their basement. In my opinion, the next 2 big allocations have to be for the taxpayer and for small business, and it includes respite care. I think it's a great idea as well for folks who took care of their family members. Remember, a lot of parents, too, who had to work from home also taught their kids. So, a lot of these parents took on multiple jobs, when they were going through the pandemic. And so I'm all for helping the teachers, but again, the Board of Ed has a huge chunk of money that they can allocate to the teachers, that they can do as well. I think they have $13 million, I believe, maybe more. Is it?
They receive several pieces, but I don't believe that any of their eligible uses is for premium pay, which is why it's included on the town
But
side.
before we get to that, we need to reward the taxpayers, in my opinion, small businesses, and any business for that matter, and folks who, again, kept this town going. We almost had a 99% tax collection through a pandemic. Think about that. I know that's going to get no awards, it's just what you're supposed to do, but sometimes let's reward people for what they're doing the right thing. And then it comes from a project perspective, those pump stations have to be done. Again, we're an old town where we live, our sewer system got overrun by the prisons. That's why we had to build a $40 million water pollution control plant. The water in everyone's basement, if we have another historic rain season like we've had, those pump stations are old and they need to be, which helps flow that water. I think the number last year during the hurricane was 22 million gallons of water went through that water pollution. Think about that. If it didn't work, where was that water going to go? Thompsonville would have been flooded. Some communities around the country dealt with that because they didn't have a workable sewer system. So I understand it's not the most glamorous thing, but man, it is important. If we're going to move forward as a community, that's just my opinion. All the other projects, hey, they're all great. We can do them all great. But I think really we've taken care of our employees. It's time to take care of the taxpayer, who again, 98 to 99% tax collection. That means something why we're standing here today. That means something. And the Enfield Express did have an input in that because people could go and pay in the drive-through, which again was, help people pay. And I can tell you, people still, as you know, complain about sending a bill to the sewer for the sewer bill. Everyone wants to pay online, or they want to pay in person in Enfield. That's just who we are. Maybe it's a bad habit of ours, but that's what we like to do. So that's my suggestion. If it's through a credit card, through some sort of, for a business, I'd like to just give the business the opportunity for what they want to spend the money on. Whether it's facade work, whether it's for back payroll, whether it's, a lot of folks got PPE money, but a lot of them didn't either, and so, I guess as long as we follow the guidelines, I'm okay with saying, look, this is your money. Let's be frank here. This was printed by the Fed, and this is their money. We should be giving some of that back to them, and then all those other projects, I'd support everything you recommend, because again, they're all important. So I don't want to nitpick between a project in any part of town, because they're all important. I know I'd love to do them all. But for me, we have to reward the taxpayer and the small business, and then prioritize the pump stations, because if we don't, the pump stations are going to cause us more. We'll run out of this money if we have another issue, if we have another season where we had the historic rain that we had in the last 24 to 48 months. So that's just my suggestion. I'm willing to be flexible on how we do it, but I think it's the most important thing we have to do, and we have to do it right away. That should be the next major allocation. I'm open to the amount of money, whether it be, $1 million, $2 million, whatever it turns out to be. And I'm also flexible if it's a credit card. I don't know, again, I know tracking that maybe gets a little dicey. So, but is there a way we can do it in a way where we can track and, again, reward the taxpayers for doing their job? So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really happy to see that a sizable proportion of this total amount of money we received from these the ARPA is going to sewer infrastructure. I think it's a critical thing. I agree with many other folks here up on the council. We use this, every resident of the town uses this on a daily basis, and it is, to the tune of 10, 20, 30 million dollars, these repairs. So I'm glad that we're getting ahead of that, and that I think will dovetail nicely into the kind of infrastructure support that the council is interested in doing, like Water Pollution Control Board, to make sure we're anticipating these huge costs. So